Howdy, folks. It's Rosendo from MLH here. I'm really excited to be kicking off Global Hack Week Web 3 with everyone. I see that a lot of folks are already in the comment section, getting busy with the questions and adding some hello and welcomes. Yeah, I appreciate it. Hi, everybody. I know that there's a lot that's going to be covered today. I really don't want to take up too much of your time, but before we get started, I do want to point everyone out to the registration form for this workshop. So I'm going to go ahead and add it in the chat for everyone and pop it up on screen. Make sure you head over to Hackpack GHW Web 3 Solana workshop to get registered. Yeah, awesome questions here. I'm really excited to basically let y'all know that we have a veritable expert in the Web3 world joining us today by way of Solana. His name is Jacob Creech, and he is the head of developer relations there. So without any further ado, definitely give him a nice round of applause and a nice welcome when I do welcome to the stage. And here he is. Welcome, Jacob.
Hello, everyone. So as Rosendo did introduce me, my name is Jacob Creech. I'm head of developer relations here at Solana Foundation. And what we're going to talk about today is how you can get started with blockchain development. And this will be specifically on Solana. So if you don't know what Web3 is, or you don't know what blockchain is, we'll cover all of that here. We'll get you started, and we'll help you all out getting started with blockchain development and get rid of a lot of the buzzwords that you often hear around blockchain. So first off, what is blockchain? As many people know, it's a big buzz term for the most part that people use with development. Ultimately, though, blockchains are just slow databases with unique characteristics. So every time that you see someone say, I use blockchain for this, use blockchain for this, replace that with like a slow database. Now that might sound bad at first. You're like, why would anybody want to use a slow database for anything? It's specifically because of those unique characteristics that unlock a lot of potential for users on whatever application that you're building. So I'll go into that real quick. So why do we care about the slow database called a blockchain? Ultimately, they have four very powerful characteristics. They're very decentralized and censorship resistant. And what does that mean is that database is not controlled by a single actor at all. There's a bunch of people using this thing. There's no one that can just turn it off. And what's really cool is anybody can execute code on that specific database or the blockchain. Digital sovereignty is the second characteristic. It's where everything that you own on that blockchain or within that database, you have true ownership and control. So a lot of the times whenever you're working with a large company or something, you're giving them data and you don't know where this data is or how it gets changed or things like that. Ultimately, the only way that you can activate the changes or who has this data is through the person who is the owner. With these large companies, the owner is actually those larger companies. On blockchain, the owner of this data is you, the person who owns their own data. The third one is immutability and transparency. So blockchain databases in general, for the most part, people hide their databases behind a lot of different firewalls, and that's a good practice because you don't want people accessing your data that you are not allowed to share. However, what you want to do is, for some applications, you want to have full transparency on everything that has happened. And for the transparency or the history, you want to make sure that's immutable as well. So this is a third characteristic that is allowed. And then the fourth one is composability. What that means is you have that database. Normally, in normal terms for databases, you have a bunch of people that have to get permission to access this database and build on top of this database. If someone like the US government has a database, they're not going to allow anybody to have access to it. But with blockchain, anybody can build on top of that. And then any application that's built on top of it can interact with each other. So if they have APIs, if they have connections with the blockchain, you can basically immediately connect with each other versus having to go through access controls such as API keys or making sure that you have access to the database that you're normally used to within working with technology. All right. So Web3 and understanding how this slow database can be used. Like, what are, given these four characteristics, what is a use case that you can use for a blockchain? So I'm going to go through like four of them and explain based off the characteristics that I talked about just now and why it might be good or bad for those blockchains. First one use case is Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a blockchain uh, that's out there. It's the oldest one. It was the first one. A lot of people use it as digital gold. So if you look at the four characteristics and go down the list of which one it applies for, it's like, okay, it's decentralized. No one can shut it down and no one can change it. If you own Bitcoin on that blockchain, you you are the only person who can control it. It's immutable and transparent. You can immediately see all the history in the past, and you can understand what's going on. However, Bitcoin's not super composable, meaning you can't really build too much on top of it. Given that it has a decent amount of the characteristics that you would need, or this application of Bitcoin or digital gold needs these characteristics, it makes sense to have on a blockchain. Um, Another use cases like digital assets, such as like NFTs, non-fungible tokens. Those are really just digital assets. Doesn't really care about decentralization, doesn't really care about immutability and transparency, but being able to build with them more with those digital assets or have a true ownership of those assets is a really big deal. I'll skip payments for a moment just to explain gaming and how it kind of works with those digital assets. So the digital assets on gaming, say you're playing, I don't know, I'm not I'm not caught up with most of the games nowadays, but I played Team Fortress 2 a lot back in college, and they you have a bunch of items on that game. Ultimately, those items can have all sorts of issues, and there's been bugs that cause with those items, and you have a very big lockdown to a very specific marketplace that you can buy and sell those items. With blockchains, you have true ownership of those items and you can buy and sell them in anything. Not only that, but you could also use those items in different games. So it works really well to have digital assets on something like a blockchain so you can do more with those digital assets and you can allow your users or your gamers to build more with those assets as well. The third one here that I have listed is payments. So if you are trying to, if you want to own like US dollars, digital US dollars, right now you normally go through like a bank, and they have the money held for you, and then they give you like basically a notary that's like, hey, you have this amount in your account, and you can transfer and all that. Um, it's very bound though, because like if you want to transfer those assets across borders or sorts of things, you take a lot of fees. It's slow. You have to work within hours of the bank, etc. It's very difficult to do that with payments, especially if you have someone in another country that needs money. Say it's your family. It will be very difficult to get them that money through a bank, or it'll take a long time. Basically, payments on blockchains has been like the first use case most people found is like immediately you have true ownership. So you have the digital sovereignty, you have true ownership of your money. If you send money, no one can stop that being sent. Everybody can understand what is the full trail of that money. And then also, given payment solutions, you can build full applications that allow payments to be a lot simpler within blockchain. We see this sometimes now. They're like, for example, Stripe. Recently, they unveiled like they're using blockchain for payments. Also, PayPal. PayPal, what, last week? Yeah, a week ago. PayPal was like, hey, we're now also using blockchain for payments and for allowing people to send money like cross border, etc. So we see this a lot within payment solutions today. I'm going to take a moment and see if there's any questions in the chat right here. Okay, so it doesn't look like anything immediately. All right, cool. So we'll just keep going. All right, so I talked about a bunch of applications that you can do on a blockchain, but like what are other things you can do? And the first thing I'm going to do is just like, hey, we're going to walk through how to create a token. So a lot of the things go into creating tokens on blockchain, and I'm just going to create one with y'all, and we can see. I can explain what it is from there. All right, so I'm going to go to this app called Playground. It's beta.solpg.io, and this is just so that we don't have to install anything. So hopefully, Rosendo, yeah, there we go. We got the beta.solpg.io on the chat or on the screen now. So if you go to this, you can just go move up the terminal window. You don't have to care about any of the code. And what we can do is we can just create a token. So if you do SPL token create token, that is a single command line to create a token. And we can see right immediately we have a token, 6xd. And if I go to an Explorer, so we'll just go to Explorer real quick. And we are on a test framework, so we have to make sure I'm on test. We go check here. We'll see immediately, hey, I've created a token on a blockchain. So there's a lot of stuff in that. And I want to break down what we just did. So in a single command line, we create a token that is living on a blockchain. Now, what is a token? A token really is a representation of an asset that can be sent across the network. So if I have my token, so we're just going to call this Jacob token. Let's zoom in a little bit more. All right, so if we have this token, so we have this Jacob token thing. Actually, let's just call it test token. This test token now is basically on the blockchain. So it's going to be on what we have as Solana, and I can do things with it. So this is on Solana. And if I wanted to like say, let's call this like airline points or something. So this is, let's say that some airline wants to do this on it. So airline. So they created a test token, and that's on Solana. And what they can do is they can use their entire point system within the token. Now you might ask, why would they want to do that? It's so that like if people find that if people want to build things with those points, they can do things more easily. Let's take an example. So credit cards all the time, you have like these airline mileage tokens or airline mileage points they can get through these credit cards. And what they have to do is they have to partner with these large airline corporations to get the spending based off of the credit cards to create these points within the people's accounts. However, with blockchains, what they can do is a credit card. So let's just call this credit card company. Credit card company. What they can do is they can instead interact directly with those point tokens. So let's actually update this since we're talking about point tokens. They can update directly to point tokens and work with those directly on Solana. They don't have to ask the airline at all to interact with those points. And so they can say like, hey, I believe that points for this airline are valuable. And so I'm going to use those to do things with it. And then people using that airline can then redeem those points for whatever the airline says you can redeem them for. So this is a quick example of like how you can use something on a blockchain to break down barriers that you previously had in Web 2. Now we have some questions I saw in the chat. Let's see. Yes, this is kind of like the second challenge. I did it a lot simpler. I would love for y'all to create your token yourself. That's what I'm here for. If you do run into any problems creating that token, please let me know and I can help you out. Let's see what else. Other question is how do we know if a trade payment is an account hidden behind a wallet ID so I know who sent it? Who sent it? Trait of the payment is but isn't Find the trail of payment that isn't an account hidden behind a wallet ID. So on blockchain, all these different payments will be linked directly to a wallet ID. You have to have a wallet, which is another one of the challenges. I have a Phantom wallet right here. This is in testnet mode, in order to interact with a blockchain today. I didn't really go into that yet, but I'm just answering the questions as we go. Let's see. What other things? What are these tasks? So, way a credit card company has a point token data without needing to ask the airline. Yes. So that's exactly the point of this whole demonstration, is that because the airline basically issued these points as tokens on a blockchain, on specifically in our example Solana, nobody has to ask to like utilize those as value. So credit card companies all the time, they create credit cards that if you spend a certain amount, you get certain points with these airlines. The credit card company does not have to ask that airline. So previously they would ask the airline. With blockchain, they do not have to ask the airline. They can just use the point tokens that are deployed already to blockchain, and use them as value on Solana. So why would you do this? Is like, if you're in the airline position, why would you do this? So one reason why you would do this is to make those points, or the reason of basically creating, using the airline to create those points, it would make those more valuable. So people that are using the airline will be more incentivized to basically use that airline, fly across the world, etc. And then why a credit card company would do this is that they say these points at the specific airline are valuable to our customers. Let's make that as a reward instead of like cash back or something. So this is good for both the airline as well as the credit card company, to create incentivization mechanism, without having to talk to each other. And what's cool is that the airline can then figure out, based off of a ton of companies, of which ones are interested in using those points, and then they can maybe partner even more with specific companies, which they already do today, to give them like extra deals. All right, can you provide a yes? So we're about to go into the code. Show us the initial code that you wrote. I don't have any code in SolPG. This is just using the command line. Would the airline not prefer to just refund that money as cash back? Or are they giving the same money as points? Oh, so the airline, why wouldn't they just give it cash back? So what they do is, if they gave it cash back, it basically, this is just getting to like business of the airline. They don't, if they do it just cash back, that doesn't incentivize you to keep using the airline. Those points are usually used for flights and stuff. The whole goal is like, hey, people use those points to fly more often, so they spend more in the long term. So that's why the airline issues like points in general. All right. Is there a difference between on-chain and blockchain? Yes, I'll get into like how you can build an application on chain. Basically, the blockchain is like, if you're building on Amazon AWS, Amazon Web Services, you can build, if you're building on it, you're basically, that's like the on chain for, if you have something deployed, that's like on chain for blockchain. You're building on blockchain, but your application might be on chain, is what it is. All right. So I'm going to go into this next thing. Someone asked a great question. Okay, well, one last question. Online provides the tokens, and anything can be done with the tokens. Yes, it's on the user. Anybody can use those tokens. So it opens the opportunity space for those points for that airline to do more. Okay, so there was a question in the chat about, hey, can you go in through like how an application looks on Solana or on a blockchain? So let's go through that. That's actually the next section. All right, so building a decentralized application, what does this look like? And what can I do with it? Because we went through tokens real quick. They're just like, hey, we created a token. We talked about a use case for token, but what if I want to use this token with more things? So we're going to first go through like a very high level example of architecture for a blockchain application. So ultimately, for building on blockchain, you'll have a web front end, that's some website, that will be talking via an API. This is specifically a JSON RPC API today, to the blockchain. And on the blockchain, this might have something that has code to give specific instructions on how to do something. And you'll find that this is very similar to normal programming. You have a front end, talks to a back end with an API. There's no difference. It's just we have Solana, or the blockchain that you're talking about. So you can kind of relate your normal programming background to building on blockchain. It's not any different. Like you building with a front end that talks to a back end is the same as a front end talking to a blockchain. It's just an API. It's the same thing that you're used to building on any sort of like traditional tech thing that you do, like with an app. The backend is blockchain. Yes, in this example, the backend is blockchain. We will not be making APIs for this for the blockchain. What it is what instead is you're given a list of APIs that already exist, for you to do instructions or actions on the blockchain, and those actions can be anything. It all depends on what you deploy to the blockchain. All right, gives data through a web to the web through an API. Yes. You can get information from the blockchain, or in this case, Solana, via an API. So it's just an easy representation of how you're used to with every normal programming. It's the same thing. So like you can remove the barriers of all this like jargon and weird buzzwords of it's really just a front end and a back end. Now, let's be honest, there is some other things that you normally do, like a cache, a DB, an index, whatever. You can do all sorts of that stuff normally, but you can also do that with the blockchain as well, to where you can actually have an additional backend that does some extra work, but you're still interacting with the blockchain for the on-chain needs. All right, there's a lot of questions in the chat. All right, so basically, Solana, yes, I asked that. A lot of people saying, can the data be stored in blockchain, be encrypted like traditional databases? Technically, yes. You kind of have to know that all this data that's being put on chain or on the blockchain, it's public. You can encrypt it. It's like your normal private public messages, basically. So we'll move down here for a moment. If Bob, we're going to go into a quick aside into cryptography. If Bob has a key that signs a message, so he'll just sign some message. Ooh, okay. He'll sign some message, and the only person that can decrypt it is basically with Bob's public key or his private key. If they don't know it, then they won't be able to find this message. So if you don't have make that public, you won't be able to figure out what this message is, basically. I would not recommend putting private data on a blockchain, though, because that's just asking for people to try to figure it out. All right. You'll have to rewind. All right, cool. So we'll just go. What is the difference between Solana and Ethereum? Do they work in a similar manner? Yes. We'll get into that in just a moment. So why Solana? There we go. So we have a lot of blockchains right out there. You hear like Ethereum, Solana. There's I don't know. There's a bunch of other ones basically. So Ethereum, Solana. Why would you do Solana? What are the key differences? So Solana in general is very fast confirmation time. What does that mean? What is confirmation time? It means an action that you take on Solana is under 400 milliseconds or less. On Ethereum or a lot of other blockchains, your expectation is going to be very, very slow. It's going to take a while to do actions on that blockchain. It's not going to do very well. But on Solana, it's very fast. It's what you expect from an application. And then also blockchains, they generally have fees as well to interact with that blockchain. Solana is very low transaction fees. So there's a lot of other things that make them different, but like at a very high level, these are the two biggest changes. And this is what you see. Let's see. There's a bunch of other questions coming in. You also need to connect before you can use the command. Okay, so people are using the command. That's great. Am I reading questions from this chat? Yes. All right. Why blockchains need fees? All right. So why do blockchains need fees? That's a great question to ask. So we'll just go into it. Um, it's great. This presentation is very high level. Most of it's going to be Q&A, it seems, and that's great to answer y'all's questions. So we have a blockchain. So let's say we have a blockchain here. So, and I'm going to first go through like the utilization of the database. All right. So normally databases, they have some company. So there's some company here that is basically paying. Ooh, they own the database and they're paying the fees, right? So this company, they own the database, they're paying the fees, and they are keeping it locked from the internet based off of very specific things. So we have internet. And then access is permission. So this is permissioned access. All right. So this is like normally what happens, right? With databases, you have a company, they're paying the fees. So we'll just do this real quick. They're paying the money to do that, and it's permissioned access. So they understand what is the specific like load that it can happen on it. You have a dollar amount that is the max that the company can use for that database, etc. Now, blockchain has permissionless access, right? So the internet, uh, and then the blockchain is permissionless. So here we are, we have a line to that, and then it's permissionless access. Now, while this is great, what this allows is just any old person, so just random person here, we'll just call this malicious actor. They can just like slam the blockchain, right? If there were no fees, they would just basically slam the blockchain and try to take it down, because it's a very useful thing over here. If the blockchain had no fees, anybody could just figure out how to take it down. Because ultimately, this blockchain, so normally this database of the company, it's like run in some cloud infrastructure. A blockchain, what it really is it's just a bunch of people across the world running what they're called their validator nodes. This is what runs a blockchain. So it's a bunch of people running nodes, basically. And this is what really is a blockchain under a hood. It's a bunch of people that are running a node. And if there's a malicious actor, didn't cost them money, they could slam the blockchain and kill the people that are running the nodes. When I say kill the people, it's kill the instances that are running the nodes. And so this is generally with no fees, this would be bad. This is what you call, if we're going to get into terms here, this is what you call a subtle attack, where a lot of people are basically attacking as malicious to try to take down a blockchain. When you have fees, basically the militia actor will run out of money before they can take down the blockchain. So that is why they have fees on a blockchain. Now, depending on the architecture of the blockchain, you'll have lower or higher fees. For Solana, you have very low fees because it's kind of like a step forward against most of the blockchains in the ecosystem, where instead of Solana being slow and single threaded, Solana is actually multi-threaded and does a bunch of things around multi-threaded views. All right, so talked about a bunch of things. I want to see if there's any questions in the chat. If we make a chat app, it won't be. If you make a chat, yes, if you make an application on a blockchain, what's interesting is because you're not like paying for the database, what it is the people that are using the blockchain will be paying for whatever the usage of the data is. So if you're putting data on a blockchain, you'll cost money. So if you look over here, this was when I created the token, and this will say that, oh, the fee to do that was 0.0001 sol. And then you can see like the balance changes, basically. There's a lot. I don't want to get into like it's supposed to be a high level presentation, so I don't want to get too much into this. But that's ultimately what it looks like. All right. What are any other? There's a lot of questions. Someone related to gas. Yeah, gas is what the fees are usually called. In other blockchains, we just call it fee over here because why make up a new term when it already exists? Um, can you talk about a company using a blockchain in business? All right. Yeah. So a company using a blockchain in business is a lot like this airline thing that I talked about earlier. Like this could be some like American Airlines or Delta or whatever. They're using a blockchain in business to do that. And I don't know if they use them today, but this is a potential thing. Another one is very recently we have PayPal, right? So PayPal uses Solana um, for for basically payments for some payments. They don't use it for all payments, but they use it for some. And what they did is they issued a token called PYUSD. And what this is it's a one-to-one with dollars. And because they issued this token, so we have this PYSD token that they issued on Solana. What it is anybody can build with this token. They don't have to like get permissionless API access with PayPal in order to build with the PayPal US dollars. And not only that, but it allows PayPal to be able to enable their customers to send money across borders for little to no fees and instantly instead of having to work on traditional banking rails. So this is like an evolution of finance for PayPal. Stripe does this similar. They don't have a token, but they do something similar to where they utilize Solana or they allow the use of Solana to do that type of payments as well. It's just an evolution on top of financial rails. All right, lots of questions. So the fees are only yes, fees are only used to. I have a lot of people are saying same question, but I don't know what the question was. If someone pay why what if someone pays all the fees and the militia actor gets access to all the personal databases of the company? Right. So going back to this question over here, if they have pay all the fees and they have access, ultimately, like in order to the goal of a blockchain is to make those fees more than the total supply in order to attack the blockchain. So they can't get all the fees. All right. Where is the profit for PayPal when using Solana? Okay, so that's a good question. Why would a company why would PayPal do this? Right? The reason being is infrastructure costs are huge. So they can do more things with blockchain than they could previously. So instead of PayPal basically partnering with all these other companies, so just like random company for like cross-border payments and then losing money on the dollar, and then basically also costing their customers more money in fees, they can just use this way. So that is like it basically removes the middleman. And that's what the case is we usually see for a lot of different things. All right. Where's the profit for PayPal when using Solana? Just answered that. Why are transaction fees lower on Solana? All right, so we'll get into that real quick. I don't remember if I have it in my slides. Let's see. Yeah, I don't. All right, we'll get back to that later. So why are transaction fees really low on Solana? So Solana, let's grab this little node thing that I made earlier. So we have all these nodes, right? And we're going to just call this Solana, right? Because ultimately the nodes that run Solana, that's what it is. So we'll send this to back. This will be Solana. There we go. All right, so we have the Solana basically. Why is it fast? So what happens is if from normal blockchains, so if we have Alice here and we have, let's do Alice, Bob, and I don't know, Carl. Say, and we'll also add David to this so that we can explain this further in a moment. All right, so say we have Alice, Bob, and David, or Alice, Bob, Carl, and David. In normal blockchains, or let's get to a use case first. So say we want to send money from Alice to Carl. Bob wants to send money from Bob to Carl, but Bob also wants to send money to David. In normal blockchains, what this is this becomes a single-threaded scenario on those blockchains. So if we have this Alice and Carl and Bob to Carl has to wait for Alice to Carl to finish before Bob can send money to Carl. Same with Bob sending David. Bob sending money to David would have to wait for Alice to finish sending money to Carl before Bob can send money to David. So it's a single-threaded solution. With Solana, these two things, so let me remove this little middle arrow first. These two things can happen in parallel because it's just built from the ground up, so it runs parallel compute. So if you think of like early 2000s, we went from single-thread processors to multi-threaded and multi-core. It's just that same evolution that's happening in blockchain right now with Solana. You can do this. Now, however, if there are two, just like in multi-threaded applications, if there's Alice sending the Carl and Bob sending Carl, this would then Bob would have to wait to send money to Carl until after Alice sending to Carl. It's just a normal programming thing. All Alice and Bob's, yes, they're always messing things up. All right, cool. We'll just continue then. All right, so general programming in Solana. So let's go. We talked a bunch about like the big overview of what it looks like. Let's go more into like how you actually build on Solana. So generally, what it is we have that web front end, right? And then we have, we're gonna have this Solana. We're just gonna have Solana here. We'll have Solana, which is actually a bunch of nodes. The way that you actually build on it is you're just going to be sending to your information via an API to what's basically just a JSON RPC API. This is normal. This is outside of blockchain. Those RPCs exist. It's a standard. And this is basically another way to interact with the blockchain. This is still permissionless, just FYI, because anybody can run those JSON RPC APIs. And what you have here is this web has things called transactions. So we'll have right here, we're going to call it a transaction. And this transaction basically has things called instructions, which are actions on the blockchain. And what this says is it's basically saying, hey, I'm sending a API request. So this is ultimately all an API request. Send to back. This is ultimately all an API request with some information such as the transaction and instructions sent to the RPC, which does something on Solana. So you can say like this instruction is sending money from Alice to Bob. And that would be part of the API request, sending from the web front end via an RPC API to Solana. Now you might ask, wait, can anybody send these? Not quite. If Alice is sending money to Carl, Alice will have to basically give a signature, like you're signing a request, to sending it over to Solana. So if I look over here, we'll just show you what that kind of looks like real quick. You can kind of ignore all the stuff that is on the screen, but I just want to show you what the signature looks like. So right here, I'm going to this is going to send an instruction. Actually, it's this one. So this is going to send an instruction. And what it's saying is this little pop-up says like, hey, something's happening. Here's the instructions. We want you to sign to make sure this is real. So I signed, and then something happened. So that is basically what it looks like. And what's special about this is that with Solana and a lot of blockchains today, is you can actually deploy what are considered on-chain applications or smart contracts onto the blockchain. So you can go push those up, and those API requests, those can basically give more instructions that these API requests can interact with. For example, what if I wanted an API request, instead of just sending Alice to Carl, I wanted an API request that allowed Alice in a single instruction to send money to all these people? That's possible. You can deploy a smart contract that would allow that to happen in a single instruction. That way you don't need any extra information. Um, if you want to learn more about like smart contracts and how they're built, we have a workshop on Monday that will go more into it. That's like a bigger topic, but we'll actually go step by step building a smart contract with you on that workshop. So highly recommend checking that one out. But this is ultimately like, if you're looking to build on a blockchain, this is how it basically works for building on a blockchain. You're creating a request with some instructions. You're hitting an API that allows you to interact with the Solana cluster. Smart contracts add more actions that you can potentially do on the blockchain. And then you can do things like what PayPal's doing up here, where they've created PYSD on Solana to do more things within their infrastructure. All right, lots of questions. Let's see what's going on. People are asking about the Solana white paper. So Solana, I would not recommend reading the Solana white paper. Like white papers, all white papers, they're like the introduction of what they think something should be. Solana has moved fast and changed dramatically since the white paper, so I wouldn't recommend looking at that. I'd rather recommend looking at like just the docs. So if you go to solana.com/docs, this will give you all the core concepts of how everything works. And this will actually dive more deep into like everything. So if you look, here's transactions instructions, what I was just talking about, it'll talk about everything at a very low level. That's if you're interested in knowing more. All right. Yes, because you're in control. Yes. Okay. Is all you can do with blockchain hold payments and points data? There's something I'm missing. You can do a lot more with blockchain, and I'll show that real quick in just a moment. But you can build applications that do more things. Like, for example, you could have a voting application on a blockchain where everybody has basically one vote, and they can send that vote to do things on that blockchain. And then you know that those people voted. It's immediately countable. And it's verifiable as well, like without anybody doing extra work. So that's another example. A great, more complicated example is you could have like a lending system. So normally outside of blockchains, let's just move this up here a little bit. So I'll get to a little bit more complex of an example. Let's say we have a bank, right? Normally we have, so let's say Alice is storing money in a bank. So this is just her money. What the bank does normally is they're actually going to lend that money out to a bunch of people. So this is Bob. So the bank will then lend basically part of Alice's money to Bob, and then they are going to get interest on it back. So they're lending the money, and then Bob is paying you like interest payments on that loan. So this is just interest. And then the bank pockets that, and Alice just keeps their normal amount of money. You can actually do this on a blockchain. This is a little bit more complex of an example, but it kind of can start opening your eyes of why would you build an application on a blockchain. So let's say we have a lending smart contract on the blockchain. So this gives you all the instructions, like if we remember earlier, let's say, to all the instructions to do that lending, right? Okay, so we have, in the same example, we'll have Alice. Alice is going to deposit her money into this lending smart contract. It's just permissionless. No one takes any fees on it, nothing. And what ends up happening, so we're depositing the money, is this lending smart contract can then also lend money to Bob. Bob can take loans based off of the money that's deposited in the lending smart contract. So let's just draw that out real quick. So the money can be lent out to Bob, but what's really cool, and this is where you get into like, hey, this is a use case for blockchain, and people do this today. Let's just move this over just a little bit. Is that the interest payments will go directly to Alice because that is an instruction in the lending program or the lending smart contract. So this is the interest payments, right? So they took a loan from Alice using this lending smart contract just because of the money that Alice had deposited in the lending smart contract. And the interest payments will go directly back to Alice. Instead of having like a middleman and you don't get any of that upside, or you'll get a little bit, like sometimes savings accounts give a little bit of interest. This actually gives all the interest back to Alice. So it's a little bit more fair, I would say, because it removes the middleman and allows people to pay direct to the direct to the manufacturer. So you get lower payments for everybody, and also the consumer or you as Alice can actually make more money off of the interest because your interest rate might be a little bit higher than you would get at like a bank. So that is an example of something that you can do that's a little bit more complex of an application on Solana. All right. Another thing. Can you tell me more variety of use cases? This is a big one. Like there are a lot of people use lending smart contracts and similar things. Like there's a lot of financial applications on blockchain that allow you to basically remove the middleman that you would usually have in like traditional technology. How is the voting system reliable? I can't just create fake accounts and vote. So on that voting example, let's say you have a wallet. So I have a wallet here. This wallet, I'll just copy and paste. This wallet's ID is BY whatever, this long thing right on the top. What I can say is the government can say, or say the US government wants to use blockchain for voting this year or something. We got an election going on. They can say, this is Jacob Creech. You can't just create another one and vote. This is Jacob Creech. I have one vote and that's it. So that's how they can do it. And it's cryptographically verifiable that this is me as well. All right, keep going down the line. There's lots of questions. Yeah, it could be like your social security, but it's a little bit more secure than social security. Probably accounts can be linked with some form. Yes, linked to an ID. Do developers pay for publishing dApps on the blockchain? Yes, if you want to deploy. So earlier we had this example of pushing the smart contract to the blockchain. Yes, they would pay for the storage of that smart contract. That's just the code that you wrote to write the smart contract to push the blockchain. You would just pay for that. That's it. Yes, all parts. Yes, we're rewarding value with the lending thing. You're rewarding more value to the end user. So what you find is a lot of these applications on blockchains, you're removing the middleman and empowering the user to be more rewarded. Like creators or something, they can get more rewards than they would have to go through like some middleman company. So this isn't just an example. There's a lot of similar examples like this, and you can kind of use this to think about like, how can I build on blockchain? What if someone made a mistake while writing the smart contract? Can be changed in future? Yes. So if someone deploys a smart contract to Solana, you can have something of there's an upgradable flag. This can be true or false, right? So this upgradable flag will tell you whether or not this smart contract can be changed. If they want to make it not upgradable and stay the same, it'll stay the same. And what you have to do is you have to actually change your smart contract every time you want to change the instructions that are available. But you can just make it upgradable if you want to. That's if you made a mistake, that's fine. All right. Parallelly live on Twitch, on YouTube, all that sort of thing. Right, so a lot of good questions. Um, so deploying smart contracts is just one time. Yes. So if you deploy the smart contract, it's a one-time thing, and then it creates more instructions that people can put in their API requests. So yeah, this is this is just like very basics of like uh, blockchain and how you can build on Solana and any blockchain really out there that allows you to build on blockchain. All right. So more questions. There's a lot of good questions. Fee amount to deploy a DApp or smart contract is smaller, is cheaper on Solana. Yeah, generally. The cost of storage is cheaper. What is the price particular of? Won't talk about cryptocurrency prices, fundamentals. This is fundamentals for just building in general. Let's see. And then I want to see all tokens that were created on Solana. How do I do that? So, so you can actually do this, but it's a little bit more complicated. So basically, if you want to find all tokens that were created on Solana, the way that it works is Solana is, as I said, it's just a database. So what we have is tokens are actually created using a token smart contract. This is technically called this token program, but for ease of use, we're going to call it token smart contract. And it will create these things that are basically like entries. So these are called mint accounts. And these mint accounts, what you can do is you can just query for all mint accounts. So here's a bunch of mint accounts. And if you query using the RPC API, you can get all these mint accounts off of the token smart contract. Now, I'll be honest, there's a lot of them. I think something like 20,000 get created each day right now. So you might be waiting a while for the API call, but it is a possibility. Isn't smart contract like smart contract is kind of like a middleman. However, there's no one person. The people that pay for the upkeep is the user themselves. Like they pay for the transaction. So if they're making this transaction up here, they pay a small fee to interact with the smart contract. It's not someone running that themselves. And the code is verifiable. So you can see this code on an Explorer and understand what you're interacting with, basically. So it is kind of like a middleman, but no one technically controls that smart contract once it's deployed, especially if its upgradability is false. Token smart contracts are different or the same. Tokens, it's a smart contract. Tokens are basically built off of smart contract. So I can use the smart contract of the token smart contract to create more tokens. These tokens are ultimately just going to be like entries. So they basically say like a mint account, and a mint account comes with, we go over here real quick. Let's see if I can show it. Create initialize mint. They'll have like the mint and you'll have information. So if I went back real quick, it'll say current supply, the decimals, who deployed it, that sort of thing. All right. If I'm doing some transaction, then some extra money you need to, yes. So if you make a transaction so if I made a transaction, let's go back to this. Let's get that in a moment. So if you want to try building an application real quick, you can just type in npx create-solana dapp, and it will create a base scaffold dapp that looks like this. It's a counter app. This is like what you'll probably build next week, is the actual how you build this counter smart contract. But if I want to do transactions, so I do this increment to increment this thing. This thing is stored on the or on the blockchain. You can see here the fee for increment is 0.0042. And then if I do that, it'll probably, if I did everything right, it'll increment. So this is pulling from the blockchain. So if I pull this count from the blockchain, you can see it's 1, but I had to interact with a smart contract that was deployed on the blockchain to update it. So we can draw that up real quick. I know we only have a few more minutes, but we'll do that. So this is a counter smart contract. It has these counter accounts. And these just basically have the number. So this was just 1. And because I sent So up here, let's move this little token diagram over real quick. Because over here I had, let's move this up. Because from the web, which was this is the web front end, I click that increment. It sent a transaction with instructions based off of the smart contract that was deployed on Solana to update these accounts. And it did that via JSON RPC API. So you can actually see that API request. If I go over here and go to the network, let's go increment it real quick. You can see right here, here's the request. I'll just confirm it real quick. So this request is got a payload. It's not that. So this has the send transaction request. And it will have some information on how to interact with Solana. You can see over here, this one will be get account. So I got some information from the blockchain and that just gave me 2. So that's ultimately what it looks like. All right. I didn't have anything else for the presentation, but I'm happy to answer any more questions for the last 5 minutes about blockchain, any burning questions you have, like what is this thing? How do I build on this thing? I'm happy to answer questions. All right. There's a lot of good questions today. Y'all are great. Fairly different nodes for validation. Yeah, so the MLH person, they were basically, the question was about like, what are the nodes? So because it's permissionless, what happens is anybody can run these nodes. That it's a cluster of nodes that runs Solana. And so anybody can run these nodes. And these nodes are basically, they're validating that these transactions or instructions are doing the right things on the blockchain. And if they don't come into an agreement across all the nodes, then that transaction will not be completed on the blockchain and won't be added to the ultimately history of the blockchain. So anyone can run them, anyone can verify. That's what the nodes are. It's a little bit more tech heavy. I wouldn't expect people to run their own nodes here. All right. What was the command for counter? It's not a command. What you'll do is in the workshop on Monday, we'll build this whole thing together. You'll build it with someone else on my team named Brianna, and she'll go through it all. All right. More stuff, please. Can someone hack a blockchain? You can't really put a virus in a smart contract. All the code is there and you can view it. Like if I wanted to go view the smart contract code, I could on an Explorer. You can't just like inject code there. And also this whole node thing is like that node, if it's on one node and not the rest, the nodes will basically reject that change. So which algorithm using Solana? Don't really know. How to build on Solana apps. So the base of how to build on Solana, you can start with this npx create Solana D app. There's also Solana. If you go to solana.com/docs, this will go through everything you need to know to build things on Solana. And you can actually go through the guides here as well to learn how to build on Solana. So if you go to the challenges, there will be a number of different challenges on the MLH website so that you can go and learn how to build different applications on Solana. They'll have links to all the guides. And then we have 1 more minute, so let's see if I can answer any other questions. Apart from what are some good use cases? So apart from decentralized applications, what are some good use cases of blockchain which are used but widely but lesser known? So payments are widely known. What is lesser known? That might take too long to answer. I only have like a minute, but I'm happy to answer. So if anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm Jacob Creech in the Discord, Jacob V Creech on Twitter. If y'all use Telegram, I'm Jacob Creech on Telegram as well. Y'all are welcome to reach out to me. I'm happy to help out. I'll just put this up here. So Jacob Creech. Yeah, just reach out to me. DM me, whatever. My DMs are open on basically all platforms. I'm happy to help out with any problems I have, but I think I'm at time. So thank y'all everyone for attending this presentation on the intro to blockchain development. Hopefully, I answered most of your questions. There's a lot of really good questions in the chat, so y'all are awesome, and I hope y'all have a good Global Hack Week.
Thanks, Jacob. I appreciate it. While my camera is getting spun up, thanks everyone for joining. And once again, really glad to have y'all along. If you have any additional questions, once again, Jacob's going to be on our Discord channel as well. And you could also drop your questions at the Ask Solana Discord channel underneath the Global Hack Week Discord channels that we have there. So, yeah, thanks again, everyone, for joining. And thanks again, Jacob. We really appreciate all the time you took here today.
Yeah, thank y'all. This has been great.
All right. Bye, y'all.